The engine is starting up.
For launch. GC, go. Guidance, go. Fido, go. Prop, go. GNC, go. Max, go. Eagle, go. Ecom,
go. Pending final steps to cabin link check.
2, 1.
Is there anyone here that would like to communicate with us? Can you give us a sign?
Welcome to the Rift Nation Network, the RNN, putting a slide in your glide and a dip in your hip. Welcome to the mothership, the home of the travelers of the universe. With shows throughout the week, you can find us at Instagram, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and more. Everything you could want, everything you can need right here, right now. From the paranormal to the supernatural, from comedy to the spiritual. And now, your featured show. Shall we begin?
It's showtime, folks!
Podcast may contain material that some listeners may find sensitive, offensive, or disturbing. We strive to create respectful and informative content, but topics discussed may include mature themes such as violence, explicit language, or controversial subjects, triggering content including discussions related to mental health, trauma, or other sensitive issues, explicit language. Occasionally, our guests or hosts may use strong language. While we aim to handle these topics with care and empathy, we encourage listeners to exercise discretion. If you find any content distressing, consider skipping or seeking support. Remember that this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice. If you need assistance, please consult a qualified expert.
Welcome to the Forgotten Library. Where the books whisper, the shadows listen, and the stories refuse to stay quietly on the shelf. I'm your host, Christina Spencer. And each month, we explore one novel together. With 3 one-hour live episodes of immersive, read-aloud chapters. Followed by a live interview with the author who brought the story to life. So find your favorite comfy chair, a soft blanket, and a hot beverage. Light a candle if the darkness scares you. And settle in for story time. Welcome to this week's live episode of Horror, History, and Hauntings Library. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas and New Year. I'm happy to be here to present this passion project of mine called the Horror, History, and Haunting Library. The goal of the library is to showcase one author a month. And tonight we're opening the book and letting the darkness in. Join me for the first live reading of The Eclipse by Derek Barton. A chilling descent into horror where shadows stretch too long, silence screams, and something ancient waits just beyond the edge of the light. For the next 3 weeks, we will be reading his works, one haunting segment at a time, followed by an exclusive author interview with Derek Barton himself in our final episode. What to expect on this episode is we're going to do a live immersive reading of the Eclipse Part 1. And I'm going to try to be as atmospheric as I can. Um, I'm hoping this will give you a chance to experience the story alongside an audience of your peers. The beginning of the month is going to be a month-long journey. We're going to be doing 3 live sessions of reading. And then on the 4th, we're, of course, doing the interview. Now, just a little bit of housekeeping. Because I'll be reading, I won't be able to look at the comments as we go along. We do have Mr. Andrew here. Greetings and hallucinations. I like that. Thank you. So every time that there's going to be a break, we are going to check comments. So don't leave if I don't respond immediately, because I want everybody to have a relaxing, kind of chill experience with the story, and I don't want to interrupt it too many times. And like the recording said, I've got my hot drink, which the background doesn't like, which is my cocoa, and I've got my blanket ready. So I suggest you do the same. Light some candles, incense, and we'll be getting started very soon. So before we get started, just so you're aware, I'm bringing Bob back. If you remember the Haunted Tales from the Old Rocking Chair, my first podcast ever, Bob was a very prominent figure, and because I'm reading and I'll be looking down most of the time, I wanted to give you something interesting to watch besides my top of my head. So we brought Bob back. So let's bring Bob to the stage. Hello, Bob. Let's see if I can switch him with me. Hold up. Well, it switches. There we go. So we're going to have Bob playing. Let's start our background music so we can relax and kind of chill out here. Let's see, is this the one I wanted? No, I don't like that one. There we go. Turn it down a little bit. And before we actually get started with our reading of the Eclipse Part 1, Derek asked me to do a couple things. First, I wanted to read the dedication. It says here, well, I couldn't find my reading glasses. These are my everyday glasses. So I'm going to do my best without glasses, and hopefully I'll be able to read fine. Getting old is not, glamorous, but it is what it is. So his dedication, it says, to my great friend, Brian F. Gotti. You have my eternal gratitude for the lessons in generosity and kindness you have taught me. Your awesome laugh and sense of humor will be sorely missed. While your flame may have been snuffed out prematurely, your positivity impacted many lives around you. The light you brought into the world lives on in our hearts. We love you, brother. So that's the dedication. He also has some notes from the author. And it says, thanks so much for reading. I hope you'll enjoy this intense tale of terrors. Do you know reviews sell books? If you found at the end that Eclipse Part 1 exciting and thrilling, which no doubt you will, because I've already read it, would you do me the honor of reviewing it on Amazon.com? It would be extremely appreciated. I would also like to give a sincere thank you and a nod of appreciation to T.D. Barton for all your copy editing and creative input into the story. You have always been the greatest rock in my foundation. Bradford Ellington for your invaluable editing contribution. For his editing services, reaching out to Bradford Ellington Author on Instagram, and if you need his services, by the way. Christy Aldridge for the amazing and terrifying cover art for this series, which I absolutely love. See her collection and pre-made covers, or commission her for an awesome cover like this one. And she's located at facebook.com under Chrissy Hearts Nerds, which I loved her name. Just a little bit about the author before we get started. Derek Barton, or author spotlight of the month. He grew up in Northeast Indiana, and he was a typical introverted kid, closer to books than people. I relate, brother, I relate. But grew up with a fascination for horror novels, such as Stephen King and Dean Koontz, and medieval fantasy, such as Piers Anthony and R.A. Salvador. I love Salvador. And Stephen King. So we got that going. In April of 1996, he moved to Phoenix, Arizona to find his own path. He has been married to his wonderful wife, Erica, since October 5th, 2012. They have 3 wonderful children together, Jenna, Johnny, and Jacina, with 2 grandchildren, little Rudy and Joey. For more content can be found on the official's author's website at authorderekbarton.blog. So definitely check that out. And without further ado, let's get Bob going.
Hey,
So
Haunted
he can be
Tales
with
fans,
us
this
in
is
spirit.
your storyteller. We're getting ready to go live in about
There
5
we go.
minutes for the
And
broadcast.
let's
I
get
just wanted
started.
to
So,
spend a couple minutes
make
to
sure you have your
discuss
comfy
some
blanket,
things
your hot
happening.
drink, your candles,
Um,
or incense.
The
And let's dive
YouTube
in.
channel, Haunted Tales from the Old Rocky
Prologue,
Chair.
Halloween,
We're going to have
October
to cut back on that
31st,
for a little bit.
2025.
My son, he's taking
A
2
brutal
college
windstorm had
courses
blown up out
and
of
2
nowhere.
advanced placement
The
courses this
weatherman
year.
on the radio
Plus,
stated,
he's in band, so
"Tonight,
he's
a
gonna get
severe
pretty
thunderstorm
busy
has
pretty
crossed
quickly,
into the valley.
so we're gonna
Please
be
take shelter
probably
immediately."
doing,
In my personal opinion, folks,
you're always gonna get
in
the
my
podcast,
15
I'm
years
gonna
of
upload the
broadcasting here in
podcast.
Chicago,
And then
I haven't seen
we're
a storm
gonna
like
try
this
to
suddenly
do
appear
1 or 2
and have this
videos
much
during the
power.
week,
I urge
probably
everyone
a
off the
best of,
streets. Take your
unless
trick-or-treaters
there's like
home
one
down.
that's really
Candy,
good
after
that
all,
stands
can be
alone
bought
independently,
at the
then
store.
we may do too.
His
I
rant
just
was
wanted
cut
to let
off
everyone
by
know that
abrupt
change.
static.
Tonight,
And then the station
we have a
began
really
an
good
old
show for you planned.
Little
We've
Red
got,
Riding Hood by Sam the
stories
Sham
from
and
other
the
dimensions,
Pharaohs.
people from other dimensions. We
Sheila
have,
looked into her rearview mirror and
Victorian
spotted
house
Rascal.
haunting.
The red Doberman
we
was
have
nestled
some
among her
monsters at the
plastic
bottom of the
shopping
lake.
bags. They contained
And
her
some
last-minute
creepy encounters
supplies
type
for
stuff,
Braden's
so
Halloween
it
costume.
should be a really good
Some glue, some white
enjoying,
cotton, red ribbons, spools,
podcast
and a
this
kit
evening.
of cream
I'm
paints.
really proud of it. I think it's the
She
best
bent
one we've
down,
done yet.
tapped her cell phone.
Um,
It read 4:55.
It's got some great music.
Damn, she
I
fretted.
think I really
I only have an hour or so to
slowed
put
down a
this
little
together.
bit on the narration.
Gary's coming from work,
It was pointed
so
out
maybe
to me
he'll
that I
be
do
late
kinda
picking
talk
him up.
kinda fast. So hopefully
Even
it's more
bad
enjoyable
wolves
tonight.
can be
so
good.
I hope you enjoy it.
She sang
I
along
will
with the
be
radio.
here the entire
Is that true,
time
boy?
during the podcast.
She
If you
laughed
wanna
as
chat
Rascal
with me,
only yawned in
down
response.
below.
As she
I'll
crossed
be
the
here
center
whole
lane
time.
and
I
turned
won't
onto
be speaking
I-57,
a lot because I don't
bullets
want to
of
talk
rain
over my
pelted her
own
window.
voice.
The storm,
'cause I want you to
fresh
really hear
off
the
Lake
stories,
Michigan, picked up
during the podcast. So
picked up its
I don't want to talk
intensity.
over myself. But I will be
Crazy,
here if you want to chit chat
rolling
or visit with me.
Thunderheads billowed and
Always
blew
feel
overhead.
free to share
It grew prematurely
out to your
dark.
friends.
Her
Start your
fingers
watch
strummed
parties.
along the
And
subconsciously
let's
on
check
the
on the
steering
time
wheel
right now.
with the tune.
Give me 1 second.
The air inside the car grew humid and stale.
We
as
got
she
about
had the
3
Camry heater
minutes
turned off.
until the podcast officially starts.
Her fingers strummed along subconsciously on the steering wheel with the tune. The air inside the car grew humid and stale as she had the Camry's heater turned off. A high-pitched horn pierced her thoughts. Sheila instinctively cracked the wheel to the right as a red pickup zoomed past, nearly missing her. The driver cursed and waved his fist at her. Sheila had obviously pulled out into his lane. Rascal barked from the back seat, scratching at the window. "Sorry, so sorry," she squealed, but of course the truck had already gone down the highway. Shaking from his reaction and the near collision, she pulled over into the breakdown lane to settle herself. "It's not my fault, right, boy? The storm is clouding everything, and I have no time to delay." Not too close behind her, she spied a set of headlights pulling into the breakdown lane to park. "See? Other people are having a hard time too," she said in her defense. Rascal whined in sympathy. She stretched out her arms and with one hand scratched him behind the ear. She felt ready, shook her whole frame one last time and merged her car onto the road. On the freeway, the speed limit was 65, but no one except the elderly drove that limit. She nudged her speed closer to 75. There were few other drivers on the road, and the drive was smooth again. The radio began a new tune, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. She hummed again and began to enjoy the ride. Exit 78 passed by, marking the border to the small burg called Oak Forest. She smiled to herself in relief. Only 3 more exits, then I'll be inside. Maybe a cup of French roast. How about a couple strips of maple bacon, rascal? Wouldn't that make it up to you? Dragging you out, and red and blue lights splashed all over the interior of the Camry. Her eyes darted to the rear view. A police cruiser was behind her, with its lights whirling. Her eyes went to the speedometer. It showed 79. Not too much over. Not normally worth hassling me, she thought. But it is raining pretty hard. With no other cars near her, she had no issues getting the vehicle pulled over to the side. She parked, turned off the car, and leaned over to dig in the glove compartment. Driver, stop moving. Place your hands on the steering wheel immediately. The booming voice came through the cruiser speakers. She froze, shocked by the fierce tone of the voice. Driver, stop moving. Sit up and place your hands on the wheel. I'm not going to give you another warning. The voice was masculine, aggressive, and agitated. Okay, she said out loud. Rascal pounced around the Halloween packages and whined again in excitement. She sat still behind the wheel with her hands at the 10 and 2 position. A long minute went by, and finally a shadowy figure emerged from the cruiser. It was a man, all alone, tall with broad shoulders, a hat, and a gray rain poncho. He slowly advanced, checking the license plate, then lit up the backseat with his flashlight. Rascal went berserk until she yelled for him to stop. Come on, you're killing me. I need to finish Braden's costume. For God's sakes, just write me up and let's go already. Sheila's thoughts cascaded around and around. He tapped at the window with the butt of the flashlight. She hit the button and rolled it down halfway. Rain splattered her immediately. She looked up but could only see angular shadows and a faint highlight on his face. Wide nose, far-spaced eyes, and a bushy beard. She noted the fact that his mouth was set in a deep scowl. Sorry, officer, to make you stand in the rain, she muttered, trying to be charming and get, basically on his good side. And don't worry about Rascal. He's too old for a fight. All part of the job. License and registration, please. He ignored her attempt at charm. His voice was devoid of any humor. As she leaned over, she noticed his hand slide to his holster. He rested it on top of the gun inside. It reminded her as she handed him the paperwork. Without glancing at the papers, he said, All right, Miss Glenn, can you step out? Are you serious? Is that really necessary? He took a large step back from her door, rested his hand again on the leather holster on his belt. Step out. I don't like to repeat my orders, Miss Glenn, or Mrs. Glenn, sorry. Sheila sighed softly, more to herself than as a protest. She didn't like his tone and demeanor, but she understood he wasn't to be pushed. More rain flooded the interior as she got out. Rascal whimpered and then emitted a low growl. The storm itself took advantage of her appearance and increased its fury. He slipped a hand around her forearm and led her to the back of the car with a firm grip. I'm going to have to pat you down now. Any sharp objects or weapons on you I need to be aware of? She shook her head as his hands roughly went over her shoulders and then down her sides. He removed her wallet and keys from her jeans pocket. She wasn't wearing a jacket. so she carried nothing else. "What is this all about exactly?" she cried out over the storm's cacophony. He seized her left arm and yanked it painfully high between her shoulders. The breath blasted from her lungs as he bent her over the hood. She heard the sound of metal handcuffs clicking shut. Then his heavy body was smothering her against the car. Leaning into her ear, he said, "Your husband, Gary, says he's sick of you, not being there for him or your son. Now, you will never be." He lifted off and threw a very heavy punch into her ribs. Then he kicked her hip with his boot to knock her to the ground. As she wheezed and writhed on the wet pavement, he popped open the trunk. Dimly, she heard Rascal furiously barking for the back seat. The officer scooped her up into his arms and tossed her like a bag of trash into the trunk. The rain ramped up once again, and all other sounds were drowned out by the pounding flurry. Panic seized her, but she couldn't decide how to act. Her fight or flight instincts overwhelmed her, and he kept taking action before she could decide. He was calm, precise, calculated. Oh God, this is routine for him. He's practiced this. He bent down close to her face. He had bright green eyes. One was all bloody from a burst blood vessel. His breath smelled of equal parts Scope mint and Buffalo Trace bourbon. Her dad drank it often. "A parting gift from me," he said, as he showed her a long, black, plastic zip tie. Sheila shrieked as he secured it around her neck. Her final plea of "No, don't do this, please," was cut off as he tightened the zip tie. It bit into her skin. Blood bubbled up around it as she clawed at it frantically. Her eyes bulged, and her tongue stuck out obscenely. He muttered excitedly to himself, "I'm doing it. I'm getting my first. I'm doing it." Time stood still, every minute, every minute detail becoming super defined. Every color sharpened and every sensation electrified and shot throughout his body. To Mitchell, the deed was over in seconds, but to Sheila, it seemed endless before her vision faded. Colors blending, then going gray, and finally dissolving into an infinite black. The whole time, the man bounced from one foot to the other. He continued his stream of words. "I'm getting my first. I'm getting my first. Yes, all I planned, precise, so easy." All right, let's check some comments because that's the end of the prologue or prelogue. Okay. Oh, Derek's here. Hi, Derek. Thank you again for the great honor. I'm super excited to participate in this and look forward to our interview. I do too, Eric. I really look forward to it. Thank you for volunteering as my first spotlight author. I greatly appreciate it. I owe you one, bud. Andrew says, "Oh, Yurik, I knew him well." I guess he's talking about Bob. Some recording is playing at the same time as you're reading. Oh yeah, I fixed it. I thought it muted it when I muted the tab, but evidently it didn't because I'm using some old video. So yeah, thank you for telling me though, but we did get it straight. And the next one, he says, "Okay, that's been fixed." Okay, I'm glad. Okay, so everything's a go. And Michelle, hi, from the Pacific Northwest, Oregon. Welcome. You come on the podcast quite often. It's good to see your friendly face. All right, I think that's all the comments right now. So we'll move on to chapter 1. 10 months earlier, January 14th, 2025. Mitchell stared intently at the word on the bleached white paper. The words, I'm sorry. Mitchell stared intently at the words on the bleached white paper. The dark red dot above the letter, it was growing. The red pen in his right hand trembled. He was losing himself again. His mind slipped, then drove willingly into the red abyss. His eyes blurred, his head grew heavy, and his thoughts revolved around the small puddle of blood? No, not blood, ink. Red pinking, red pen ink. His inner voice scolded him. Another voice insists, no, it is blood. Or it could be. Hot, thick, gooey, smooth. You can make this happen. You know where you could get all this blood. He imagined it flowing through his hands, a pool of it sloshing and washing up over his torso, flowing over his chest and up his neck. In his thoughts and in reality, he stuck out his tongue trying to get a taste of the hot liquid with, "Whoa, are you Mr. Michaels? Are you all right?" The student asked, standing at the corner of his desk. Mitchell shook his head, slamming back into the real world. His fourth period English class at Bogan High School materialized before him. "I'm sorry, what?" The student stared at him. It was 17-year-old Corey James. Punk, always a smartass. An inner voice, his darker half snarled. Mitchell murmured instead, "Mr. James, do you need anything?" Corey sneered. "Do I need something? Man, you look like you were about to make out with that homework paper." "That is enough. If you're done with your work, please place it on the pile and return to your seat. Thank you." He grinned pleasantly at him. His mask, as the earnest and generous Mitchell Anson Michaels slipped back into place. Corey scoffed, tossed the paper down, and shuffled over to his cluttered desk in the back of the room. No one else had paid any attention to their exchange. The time remaining for their pop quiz was nearly over. Known among the school staff and his friends as Gentle Giant Mike, Mitchell stood at 6'4", weighed 260 pounds, and had a thick head of dirty blonde hair. His beard was kept short and trim. He towered over his students and most of the faculty. But his giving nature always won them over. Mentoring and volunteering his time had made him a standout among his peers. Most of his students thought the world of him. Mitchell returned to his work on the assignment he had been grading. His eyes glanced for a brief moment at the splotch of red his pen had caused. The ink had gotten on his fingers and thumb as well. He picked up the broken pen and dropped it in the basket at his desk. He shot a glance at the digital clock that hung on the wall behind the class. It was 12:14 p.m. 15 minutes later, the PA alarm signaled the conclusion of fourth period. School was half over for the day. That was good. The mild hangover from some happy hour drinks the night before had eroded his energy and his patience for the day. Brad Keller always convinced him and several of the other teachers that it would be a quick drink. The 29-year-old bachelor always had charm and a presence about him that made it hard to say no. Mitchell liked and hated Brad Keller, if that was possible. The smooth salesman in the history teacher was relentless. He actually envied the skill, as he was sure Keller also had a wild sex life. "Oh, come on, fellas, live a little," he would taunt them. And just like that, with a snap of his fingers, he would snare them all. They would hit up O'Mallory's Tavern on the way home. Drinks that would lead to an inevitable fast round of poker. "Not tonight, my friend," he whispered to himself as he traveled down the east wing hall toward the gymnasium. He had several manila folders tucked under one arm, and from his right hand he carried a small silver briefcase. He pushed open the twin metal doors. Inside the gym, the senior-junior speech team waited. 10 anxious students sitting in the first two rows of bleachers. Next weekend, they would travel to Syracuse, New York. There, they would be presenting in front of an academic board of collegiate professors at the 2025 National Toastmasters Conference. Sorry, guys, thank you for your patience. He walked to the desk placed before the bleachers. From one of the folders, he produced a small stack of papers. A moment later, he studied one sheet with red ink notations. Let's see. Yes, Matt. We finished with your presentation on Chicago's guardian angel serial killer, correct? Yes, sir, the young man answered. He sat at the far end of the second row. His hair was a mess of long curls that hung low down to his shoulders. A faint line of a mustache crossed his upper lip. Mitchell reviewed his notes once more, then said, "It seemed pretty well researched, but I didn't find your final summary fully compelling or plausible. Despite the authorities never capturing him or her, it doesn't automatically mean that they are likely dead or incarcerated." But Matt began, but his voice cracked. However, he pushed on with his defense. His shoulders slumped with a lack of confidence. Compulsion is a common drive for serial killers. It's a fact that they can't stop. They won't stop unless captured or killed. That might be true, but who can say if the guardian angel simply left Chicago? Mitchell countered. What the hell do you know, shithead? Researching on YouTube is your only skill. The youth's jaw dropped and closed with confusion. I'm only saying that they could have restarted somewhere else. You need to include that in your final speculations before your presentation. Otherwise, I think you are ready. Mitchell tucked the paperwork back in his folder and scanned the small group. Are we ready to begin? Who has not given their presentation yet? Danny Codron, a senior and one of the school cheerleaders, sat between her two closest friends, Shane and Courtney. She had dark brunette locks that cascaded down past her slight shoulders, a spattering of freckles on pasty white cheeks, and a mouthful of braces. Her hand slowly went up. Okay, Danny, what is your thesis? I selected the topic of influential leaders of American conflicts. She paused and looked down at her collapsed hands in her lap. She gathered herself up and then continued. I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell. I have to confess, I'm not quite finished. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. What is the issue? He asked, more curious than upset with her. Why are you wasting my time with today? Danny was routinely one of his better students and was expecting to compete for class valedictorian. My grandfather actually made a suggestion that I write about Will Keith Kellogg. Wait, who? Are you talking about the owner of the cereal company? The words popped out in surprise. Laughter erupted from the group. Danny's cheeks grew even redder. She kept her head down, partially hiding behind her papers. Mitchell raised his hand to settle the group down. She continued, Well, yes. You see, my grandfather served in World War II, and he had that before Kellogg. The standard breakfast was... And he said that before Kellogg, the standard breakfast was gruel, grits, or porridge. All of these had various ingredients and had a lot of weight to ship. With the grain cereals that Kellogg made, the Army was able to streamline the breakfasts. It saved on shipping costs, and the troops were constantly fed. It was always the case before, and in other wars, supply shortages were devastating for troops. Anyway, my grandfather thought he would make an interesting person for my speech. Mitchell got up, walked around to the front of the desk, and leaned back against it as he folded his arms over his chest. I see. Let me guess the problem. You're having a hard time finding information or articles to back that up, right? She nodded glumly. Okay, well, I can extend the deadline for you on this one. I can give you until Tuesday to complete the speech in time for our trip. You won't get time to practice it, though. He paused to see if the group was paying attention. Consider this a valuable lesson for all of you. People will always have personal experiences or ideas to suggest. But as a writer or journalist, you must have a discerning eye on the matter. Dissect it and get to the heart of the idea. Ask yourself if this is an important issue or is this something I can find enough to write about? As in your case, Danny, it's in content. Do you think you can make a compelling speech on the idea of how cereal impacted the troops during the war? It is big enough to showcase, or are you working due to sentimentality? Is this worth pursuing, or are you writing it for your grandfather? You think I should find a different person to focus on? Too many like her, filling this world up, taking up resources, shitting it all away. Too many stupid sluts like this to endure. I'm going to leave that up to you. If you can make the speech yours and fully articulate the importance of Kellogg's contribution, then do so. If not, you have 4 days, including the weekend, to jump ship. Thank you, sir, she replied gratefully. Worthless sack of shit. Stop, Mitchell scolded himself. These kids are young and naive, but there's potential. As their teacher, I'm responsible for molding and growing that in them. You're only being vile. He shook his head, gathered himself, and slipped an expression of patience and gratitude on his face. You're welcome. I don't want you to feel extra pressure, but this is an important conference, class. This will be something that not only will win you scholarships, but you can also detail it on your college applications. Let's knock it out of the park and really stand out on this one. So let's check. Do we have any new messages? It doesn't appear so. Okay. Very good. Moving on. Sixth period dragged on mercilessly. Wind kicked up outside, and a splatter of slushy ice and snow flurries pelted the windows along the south wall. An afternoon snowstorm had swept in off Lake Michigan. It was premature for this time of year, but most people in Chicago learned to be ready for anything. The weather was always fickle in the Midwest, especially near the Great Lakes. He would have to take everything home. Versus staying the extra hours at the school to grade yesterday's homework and the pop quiz. Gina, his fiancée, expected him over tonight for dinner as well. Mitchell wheeled his chair back from his desk and crossed to one of the windows. Snow had already fallen and gathered on the football field and near the parking lot. The skies were cobalt and overcast. A chill draft leaked through the frosty glass. He rolled his shoulders, stepped back, and went to a beige wall phone. Mitchell dialed an extension. Mr. Michaels here. Yes? Mr. Gordon? I think you should consider an early release. Yes, the weather outside looks nasty. I imagine in a half hour the roads are going to be treacherous. His last words were drowned out by the uproar from the excited students. Mitchell waved at them and tried to minimize the noise in the room. All right, very good, yes. You have a wonderful night too. He ended the call. A moment later, a sharp bing sound came over the intercom. Students, we'll be closing early today due to the inclement weather. Please begin to make your way to the buses. Thank you. Hell yeah, thanks, Mr. Michaels, one student exclaimed. He was a small kid, lanky and slightly stooped. Zach Shepard, one of the school's top track stars, spoke up. May I use my cell phone to call my dad so he can come get me early? Others quickly repeated the question, asking to also use their phones. Mitchell nodded. It was against school policy to use phones during school hours, but he saw no harm in allowing it now. School had been dismissed. A PA system bell rang out and made it official. The students filed out, laughing and overly giddy. They might be high school students, but inside they were all still kids. As the last of the line proceeded out, the Bogan High School Bears star running back Corey James came up to his desk with another paper in his hand. "Hey, Mr. M, here you go in case you get lonely tonight. Enjoy." He flipped a paper onto his desk, cackling with laughter as he slipped through the door. The paper had a naked woman, crudely drawn in red ink. Her legs splayed open obscenely. The word "Lake Here" with a black arrow pointing the way were above her. Mitchell swept it up in his hands and crumpled it, his temper beginning to growl. The storm outside also grew in strength and fury, as if feeding off Michael's mood. Now blinding flurries of fresh snow pelted the windshields incessantly. He took a long sip of his coffee. ASMR. I lost my place. Hold on. Oh, because I wanted to sip a hot chocolate. He settled back in his chair and worked to calm his nerves. Thoughts of holding the boy's intestines in his hand filled his head. Cora was a typical kid. It was nothing abnormal, yet there was something about that mouthy teen that got under his skin. He was expected to do well in college football programs somewhere as a running back. For that reason, he barely made any effort with his assignments and tests. The plain digital clock on his wall displayed 12:45. He had to heed his own advice and started to gather his papers and texts into his work duffel bag. A few minutes later, he jogged with his hands up over his head to shield himself from the snow as he opened his gold Ford Thunderbird. He flung his bag in the back seat and waited behind the steering wheel. A few minutes later, he cruised down the I-83, keeping it slow and steady on the slick roadway. He dug out his cell phone. He knew it would be better to call now versus when he reached the woody outskirts of Chicago. Cell towers were not as prevalent, and his reception grew spotty. Despite the long, everyday drive to and from Bogan, he loved the time of isolation, the freedom it gave him. He would often listen to classical music or even lose himself in an audiobook. Sometimes, when the mood took him, he would allow himself a fantasy. A homicide would bloom in his mind, like a black and thorny rose. He would spin the encounter in his mind in every gruesome detail and direction he could. Mitchell and Vile debated every single angle. His two sides liked to work out the opportunities, the challenges, and the obstacles. He conjured every conceivable detail of how he would kill a person in a certain scenario. It was his darkest craving. He buried the needy feeling deep, like his victims in those daydreams. Vile kept appearing with a shovel so they could dig them up and dance with the corpses. He called his fiancée. The cell phone rang twice. As expected, she picked up precisely on the third ring. Gina was a stickler for routine, frustratingly religious, frigid. Currently, she was a stay-at-home marketing executive for a large downtown law firm. Her hours were long, but at least she didn't have the hassle of commuting. Privileged. "Hey, honey," she greeted him. "How's your day going? Are you still in class?" "No, it had to be called off early." "Wow, really? Why?" Blind, ignorant, and clueless. Mitchell shook his head. She had a kind heart and was very generous, but she would never be regarded as an intellectual. "You haven't noticed the weather?" The squeaking wheels of her computer chair could be heard as she scooted away from her desk. "Oh, yeah, okay," she murmured, obviously looking out the window of her small third floor apartment. The weather station on the radio reported that we will be seeing a record 4 inches of snow coming in tonight. "You okay if I stay tonight after dinner?" She giggled. "Only you would use the weather as a way to parlay a reason to spend the night in my bed." "Yeah, extortion is the only way it seems that I can get sex from you," he mused bitterly. Mitchell cruised past a beat up sign that announced it was 33 miles to Romeoville. He'd grab his overnight bag first from his condo and then head to Gina's place in Lockport, guiding the Ford to the connecting ramp to merge onto the I-171. He immediately found the road was caked with at least a half inch of snow already and not yet packed down much from the other vehicles. It was dicey as the back wheels fishtailed a bit. He eased off the gas and let it coast down to 30 miles an hour. "I don't accept this as a rejection of my inquiry, Miss Dawson. I think you are the one who wants..." His words faded as the road took his focus. Ahead, the tarmac angled up as it crested a small hill. He gave it some speed to help clear the top. However, on the other side of the hill, the road appeared to be clearer. It was spared the weather since it wasn't facing the coming wind and storm. He kept the speed at 45 miles an hour when a streak of orange-brown color darted across the base of the hill. It was a large breed of dog. "A fucking Afghan," his mind screamed. It was too far away to identify it for sure as it bolted across to the center of the lane. There it froze and dropped something from its mouth in shock at seeing a car barreling towards it. "Shit!" Michael shouted in surprise. His wheels found no purchase. A hidden, thin sheen of ice covered the freeway. He slid into the other lane, then back into his own. The car's momentum carried it around violently, twisting it backwards. He panicked while trying to regain control, yanking the steering wheel on reflex. But the spin-out's direction did not help. Gravel was ground underneath his tires, and the car jerked downward as he launched from the shoulder. The Ford bounced and careened. Screams and pleas for Mitchell to answer Gina came from his phone that had been thrown and lay neglected in the back seat. Mitchell's hands were torn free from the steering wheel as he was flung over the center console. He crashed hard into the passenger window. His earlobe burst open and blood sprayed the interior with tiny droplets. He screamed in terror as he saw the massive tree trunk looming ahead. Before his world shut off like a television getting unplugged, Mitchell launched forward and cracked the windshield with his head. He bounced back and crumpled into the wheel well. The front right fender took the majority of the incredible impact, but the rest of the car wrapped itself around the base of the tree. There were several lacerations along his cheek, temple, and the top of his skull. Blood poured out, hot, thick, gooey, smooth. A small pool gathered along his neck and shoulder. Okay, so that's the end of the first chapter. Let's look and see if we have anything in our chat. If anybody would like, if you like this so far, let me know. If there's anything you'd like to see me change, make sure that you're letting me know in the comments also. And we have about at least 10 more minutes. Let me see how long chapter 2. We might get partially through chapter 2, but I don't think we're going to get all the way through it. But let's see how far we can get, okay? So chapter 2. At first, Mitchell could only see flashing images between periods of darkness. A group of blurry, masked faces rushed in and out, hovering over him. Then a series of bright, fluorescent lamps hung from dirty ceiling tiles that came into view as his body was lifted and carried on a stiff stretcher down a narrow hall. An anguished feminine voice said his name, but the owner stood too far away to be recognized. He had no sense of time or place. Every waking moment, his body ached and throbbed in every painful way imaginable. His head felt as if it were splitting in three by blazing bolts of lightning. Finally, his body would plummet into unconsciousness due to medication or simple exhaustion. These bouts of darkness were peppered with disjointed dreams. There were nonsensical classes or long winded lectures he gave to students he didn't even recognize. One dream, he recalled he had been on a long excursion into a human jungle. Suddenly, a horde of tiny humanoid creatures sprang from clusters of fern plants and chased him down one of the trails. He woke as several claws had found purchase in his shoulder and lower back. Now his eyes took in the sight of the hospital room, which was dim with heavy shadows. It was late at night in the ICU, but he could hear the shuffle of nurses making rounds or discussing medical files. Mitchell's eyelids were heavy, and the pull of sleep dragged at him, yet the nightmare had sent a jolt of adrenaline. He doubted he would sleep soon. Complex machines and overhead monitors rang out in disjointed rhythms and electrical buzzing. Lifting his head a few inches off the starched bedsheets gave him a chance to scan his body's condition. His right arm and leg were in a cast, and a thick, padded wrap encased his ribs. At his brow, he felt sweat trickle and run down the back of his neck. Cotton bandages covered the majority of his head. He rested his head back on the stiff pillows behind him. In spite of the injuries and the obvious fact that he was in the hospital, he wasn't alarmed or upset. He slowed his breathing, relaxing his body, and began a mantra to focus his thoughts. While he was aware he was lucky to be alive, he couldn't quite recall how he'd been hurt. So you see, Mitchell, while the cast can come off your wrist and leg roughly 6 weeks from now, the ribs may take more time to heal and recover. Physical therapy will also be necessary to restore your hand movement. The small man droned at the foot of the bed. "It's Mitch," he interrupted the doctor in a raised, stern tone. "Pardon? My name is Mitch, please." For all his life, even as a baby, everyone used his formal name and never shortened it. Yet upon waking from this accident, the full name, Mitchell Anson Michaels, did not feel right. It rang alien and foreign in his mind. He refused to use the long version of his name any further. Certainly. Sorry," the doctor said, obviously taken aback by the vehemence of the statement. Dr. Velhallen was East Indian with a slick back black hair and a thin, wiry mustache over his lip. 2 brown warts on the left side of his chin distracted Mitch. A single stubby hair grew from one. It sickened Mitch and made his stomach churn sourly. Another side effect of the severe accident was apparently a heightened sense for detail. He found his eyes would focus and fixate on minute details, or the faintest of smells grew overwhelming. The sheets on the bed felt coarse and chafed his skin. "As I was saying, I have issued orders for your transfer to an acute rehab facility. They'll transport you this evening. You should be healed enough to start the first of 3 surgeries. The decompressed fracture that runs along here," he ran a callous finger down Mitch's right temple to indicate it. We will use stapling to secure it and to speed up the regrowth process. Then a craniotomy up here on the forehead will be necessary to remove the embedded skull fragments. During the surgery, we will be assessing if a debridement is needed. Debridements are done to remove damaged or infected brain tissue. Then the final surgery is a bone flap replacement to restore any shifts of or dislocations of the skull plate. Jesus, Doc, he muttered. Am I going to be all right? You are under the best care in Chicago, and I'll be making weekly visits to the rehab to ensure that your recovery is going as planned. The surgeries sound scarier than they really are, I promise. The brain damage you suffer can be handled. The movement in your arm and hand will resume by the end of the year. You are young. Your body can work miracles. You will see. Mitch shifted under the sheets. His back ached from the prolonged time in one position. How long do you think I'll need to stay in the hospital? I mean, the rehab facility. Normally, for one skull fracture surgery, you can expect a 12-week recovery period. However, since you suffered the dual cracks and adding in the time, you'll need manual movement therapy. It may take you through July or August. That is, of course, provided you don't have any infections or setbacks from the surgeries. Mitch felt his shoulders slump as a huge weight settled upon them. The news had hit him hard. His normal dark thoughts had descended into anger and misery. His life, as he knew it, was snubbed short, maybe permanently altered. He was a prisoner to his body and what it demanded now to rebuild and recoup. Don't worry, you're free now. We have a lot to plan for in the future. New pleasures like you have never had before. That wispy voice spoke in his mind, as if somehow spoken behind him. It had an unusual feeling with it, like an itch you couldn't reach, yet not necessarily uncomfortable. Once you called me vile. I like that. You may address me as vile. I'm here now. You are free. We are unleashed. All right. Let's look here at chat. We have a little bit of a break here. Thanks, Derek. He says, doing a great job. I appreciate that. Let's look. Can we get through this little part? I think. Ooh, this is a little longer than I thought. I don't think we'll be able to move any further than that for tonight. I just want to do a special thanks again, Derek, for hanging with me and let me do this little project. I want to thank the R.I.F.T Radio Network for allowing me to do this little passion project of mine. If you like this, make sure that you spend the time to subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out the R.I.F.T Radio Network channel, where they have other podcasters that do their own different style of podcasting. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for watching, and make sure that you come back next Friday at 9:30. We'll continue and finish chapter 2 and see how far we can get on the second night. I greatly appreciate you all, and as always, let me find it. Thank you for watching, and sweet dreams. Bye, guys. Oh, can't find it. There we go.